This episode is brought to you by Indeed. Stop waiting around for the perfect candidate. Instead, use Indeed sponsored jobs to find the right people with the right skills fast. It's a simple way to make sure your listing is the first candidates see. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs have 4 times more applicants than non-sponsored jobs. So go build your dream team today with Indeed. Get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
I mean, one of the things that I just did was I spent 9 months tracking egg prices across the city of Portland. So I logged over 4,600 individual egg carton prices. And what you see is, depending on where you shop, there are stores in town where you might be paying 50, 60% more for the exact same carton simply because they can charge that, you know? And as a shopper, you don't have the time to go around to all those stores. This is my job, so I do, and that's what I do. And that's the idea, is that like me doing that work can help people save serious money.
This is Small Press Big Ideas, a podcast about the business of local news in the United States. I'm your host, Paul Gewertz. Small Press Big Ideas is about the opportunities and challenges that local news publishers are facing for their businesses. I'll sit down and talk with journalists, entrepreneurs, nonprofit leaders, and more in the local news industry to find out what's working, what isn't, and how the local news ecosystem can innovate and flourish in the 21st century. All right, today on the podcast, I'm joined by Bryan Vance. He is the founder of Stumptown Savings in Portland, Oregon, and also a digital media consultant with CurioCity Collective. And yeah, like I kind of said before I hit record, Bryan, I've been following you for a while, so excited to talk about this, and thanks for coming on the show. I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having me.
Cool. So could you just just kind of set a baseline, just kind of give myself and the audience, talk a little about your background in local media and your story? Yeah. So, I mean, I've been in journalism since like 2011. I went to J school, went to the Scripps College of Communication at Ohio University, but I was actually only in it for a year. I kind of didn't know what I wanted to do while I was in college and was sort of figuring that out until my senior year. But then I enrolled in that and just like immediately dove all in journalism, and specifically like local journalism. Started out in sports, but then quickly moved into local news in general. And I've just been in it ever since then. The cool thing about Ohio University is they own a dual licensee public media station, so WOUB. So I was doing TV, I was doing radio, I was doing digital. They don't do print, but they do digital. I was doing all of that and just kind of got hooked on the digital side of it in particular, because it was, we were still figuring things out back then, as weird as that sounds. We're still figuring things out now. Yep.
It changes constantly. And so, just kind of dove in from that, and then, got a job at some Gannett papers in the Carolinas, and then eventually moved out to Portland to work at Oregon Public Broadcasting, where I spent a long time at. And just been out here ever since. I mean, local news in particular is just really fun for me, because the stories are constantly changing, the stories are constantly evolving, and you get to know the people that you're not just covering, but also the people that you're like covering for, your audience. And it's just, there's something really special about that.
Yeah, that's been kind of a trend on the show lately. Just like, and the other thing I like about local news, I never run out of interesting people to talk to.
There's so many
on this pod. I started this show. Apologies to the listeners. I started the show like 2 years ago. Apologies, because I tell the story all the time. And I was like, maybe I didn't really know anybody. I was like, maybe I can get like 10 people on. And like 2 years later, I'm on like episode 80 or something like that, and we're booked out. So anyway, very cool. Could you talk a little bit about your background? Tell me about Stumptown Savings, because it's a little different than some of the other ones I've found on here, where most of them is like local news. This is more of a sub niche. It's kind of local news still, but I'll let you talk about it.
Yeah. Stumptown Savings is weird, admittedly. It's so it's a hyperlocal news outlet that is very focused on the food system and the food industry through the lens of food that you buy to cook at home. So I live in Portland, huge restaurant town. We have a ton of outlets who cover the restaurant scene. Nobody was covering the cost of groceries and how people were dealing with the, record-breaking price increases that we were seeing at the grocery store. And so I started this in April of 2025 when I got laid off from my job, because I was also dealing with it. Eggs were at an all-time high at the time.
Yep.
Funding for federal, assistance, not just, via SNAP, but to farmers was getting cut. And it was just a really scary, crazy time. So I decided, why not put, my skills in local journalism to use in trying to help people figure out how to navigate this. So Stumptown Savings, it's sort of like Wirecutter, if anyone's familiar with that, in that like I cover deals. That's a big part of it. So every Thursday I curate grocery deals from more than 20 Portland area grocery stores. So I look through all the ads so people don't have to. I pull out what's actually a good deal, not just like, marketing. It's really funny the amount of times, a store will put something in there as a sale. And when you actually look back a few weeks ago, it was cheaper when it wasn't on sale. So that does actually happen quite often. And, the nice thing about me doing this is I'm able to spot that. The average person doesn't have the time or the institutional knowledge to spot that. So that's a big part of it. But then I also cover things like the people growing and making the food that you buy, and the farmers markets and the different agencies that are helping, provide food assistance. So, I've profiled Meals on Wheels people, our local Meals on Wheels chapter, and how they feed 3,000 seniors in a single week. I've profiled an indigenous run farmers market out here in Portland, and this really interesting program that they tried this summer, which was a food assistance program with no questions asked, basically. And so, typically farmers markets have programs where if you're on SNAP, you can get like some sort of match. Theirs was that, but also literally anything. So you could just be like, I had a hard week, and they do it for you. So, it's a mix of that deals coverage, but then also trying to help people better understand their local food system, like what's driving increases in cost, but also who are the people out there that are making the food that you buy, and what are the different things happening in the industry that are impacting them, but also impacting the price you pay at the grocery store.
Yeah, it's really important, like I said, it's a little different than some of the other ones on here, but it's kind of serves that same need of, especially since COVID, food prices have gone kind of crazy. I mean,
gone through the roof.
Yeah. What's the reaction kind of been like audience wise? Like, has it grown pretty quickly? Like, what feedback have you gotten from people in Portland?
Yeah, I mean, people who find it are pretty happy with it. It's grown relatively quickly in that, like, I started from nothing. So it's like, the newsletter's got several thousand subscribers. TikTok weirdly took off for me and has even more subscribers than the newsletter. So it's like the reaction's been pretty positive. Part of the challenge, though, is like it's totally new. No one's heard of it. It has no name recognition. And, it's a crowded media scene. Like we have a lot of local news outlets in Portland, a lot of them. I mean, we have 2 alt weeklies, for example. Most cities don't even have one. We have several print papers, 1 daily and then a few others. We have tons of independent news outlets here. So it's just a crowded field. So trying to stand out there is a little bit tough. But the reaction to people who actually find it and use it has been overwhelmingly positive. It's hard to like on something that's designed to help you save money at the grocery store.
Yeah, totally. I didn't have this in the prep, but now I'm curious. You talked about how like, you find actual deals, not just marketing. Like I think I'm a little older than you, but I remember that I grew up in Denver, and like the Rocky Mountain News, half of like the Sunday paper would be like from the grocery stores.
Oh yeah, no, I remember this growing up too. Like Sundays and Saturdays, like the thing that I remember asking my parents was like, can I see the ads? Because it wasn't just grocery stores either. It was like all the local electronic stores and everything.
All the fun stuff. Yeah.
It's so your question, I'm guessing, is like, how do I do it? Like,
What's the mechanism there? Exactly. You read my mind.
Yeah. It's it's not too dissimilar from that. So a lot of these stores still put out flyers. They just do it in digital formats. So either they have like a mailing list that they send out once a week or once a month, or they have a page on their site where you can get it. And so I just comb through all of those. There are some stores who don't do anything like that. And they may occasionally post updates on Instagram or whatnot. And when I know about those, I pull them in. One store that I cover famously doesn't do advertising. So I go to the store and see like what's on sale on their shelves, because that's the only reliable way that I'll be able to find out. So it's a mix of a bunch of different things. And, Obviously, none of this info is something that a person couldn't find out on their own. The difference is the scale. So I'm doing it, like I said, at 20 different stores. I highly doubt most people have the time to do that. And I'm doing it for you. Like you don't have to do it. And then I do have that institutional knowledge and the data to show that, this price is actually not that great of a price compared to something that we saw 6 weeks ago or 3 months ago or whatever. And part of that is just, looking back through old posts to see what the sale was. I do some like data tracking. So every month I go out to the 21 stores, and track the price of 20 items that I've, laid out. So I picked like 20 like grocery staples. So things like eggs, cheese, milk, apples, potatoes, stuff like that. And every month I go out and track the price at these 21 stores to see, not only who has the best deal, but how those prices are changing over time. And so that data is really helpful when I'm evaluating sales to see like, is that actually better than that standard price I saw a month ago? And if it's not, then I just don't include it.
Yeah, it's super helpful because I'm like, I have my own, I have kids, got a business to run. We're still constantly like working on this house and everything. And it's like, sometimes I go to the store, I'm like, I guess it's a good deal. Right. I don't remember what tortilla chips cost.
Right.
6 months or a year ago. But it adds up too, especially for like a household.
100%. I mean, one of the things that I just did was I spent 9 months. So, basically from the time I launched the newsletter until the end of 2025, tracking egg prices across the city of Portland. So I logged over 4,600 individual egg carton prices. And what you see is, depending on where you shop, you could be spending hundreds of dollars more per year if you just buy a carton of eggs every week, for the exact same eggs. Like that's the thing is because the way I was tracking this, I was able to say like, Vital Farms is this brand that a lot of people loved until recently. There's some controversy around them, but
I'm out of the loop. I'm not sure. Basically,
Vital Farms is this like high animal welfare brand. They partner with a bunch of like independent family farmers. Their eggs are all pasture raised. They came under fire because I think a lot of people were under the impression that their hens were only eating grass and bugs. And it came out that they supplement their feed with soy and corn. And a lot of people don't like that. So there's been some pushback against them. But it's like one of the biggest like premium egg brands in the country. It requires a high price point typically. But there are stores in town where you might be paying 50, 60% more for the exact same carton simply because they can charge that, where if you literally go like 2 blocks over in some cases, you'll get it for half the price. And that adds up, and as a shopper, you don't have the time to go around to all those stores. This is my job. So I do. And that's what I do. And that's the idea, is that like me doing that work can help people save serious money.
Yeah. Yeah. It's great. It's a great resource. So you kind of talked about, this is my job. Could you talk a little bit about Stumptown as a business? Is this a sustainable business? Like, what's the model look like? I would imagine just from market, you said, if you just list to me on where to buy your eggs, you could save hundreds of dollars a year. That seems like a no-brainer. Trying to get somebody to pay a subscription or something.
Yeah.
Could you talk a little bit about like the business side of it and how you're looking at it?
Yeah, I mean, it is not sustainable yet. So like I said, I started this when I got laid off. Oregon has this program where you can qualify for unemployment while building out your own business. So I relied on that to really get it started, which helped me, really focus on this because I didn't have to spend, 20, 30 hours a week hunting for jobs just to get my unemployment benefits. Like I poured all my effort into building this business, and that helped. I've done, I have a membership that's helped. I have about 180 members right now. I've done a few fundraisers, that have raised several $1,000s. And then the thing that has always bugged me about local media is like when you put all of your eggs in one basket. And so I'm very deliberately trying to not do that. I'm trying to not just be membership based and not just be like grants and whatnot based, but also advertising and other streams of revenue. That part's been the toughest part because I've always worked on the editorial side. I don't know how to sell ads. Like I've really had to learn that. I've made a lot of mistakes early on, but that's the part that, I'm really focused on right now, is like building out that advertiser revenue and exploring alternative revenue streams to sort of diversify the income. The good news is it's not sustainable yet, but it's also not hemorrhaging money. Like I have the money that I've been able to raise so far, like most of it's saved. And so I've got the funds to cover the operating expenses, which are surprisingly low if I don't pay myself for quite a while. And now it's just, figuring out how to increase the revenue so that I can keep doing this longer.
This is your fix.
I am your host, Stassi Schroeder. Welcome to Tell Me Lies, the official podcast. What's the most unhinged thing of season 3?
Steven, because he's so evil.
I do think he is misunderstood.
You see everyone face consequences.
It's intoxicating. The writers just know how to trick you. There's always a twist in this show. Tell Me Lies, the official podcast, January 6th, and stream the new season of Tell Me Lies, January 13th on Hulu and Hulu on Disney+.
Yeah, that's awesome. You kind of talked about, first of all, when you said diversifying revenue, that's a great thing. I've referenced this a few times. I read something, I need to dig it up because I'm not sure what it was. I read something for newsrooms in particular where the sweet spot is like 3 to 7 sources of revenue.
Yeah.
If it's less than 3, you're in trouble. And if it's more than 7, you're just like not focusing on anything enough.
Yeah, and you're probably not getting to like the amounts you're getting from each of those are probably too small to really add up. Right. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this is a thing, when newspapers were all in on advertising, sure, in the heyday it was great, but when that market started to dry up, they were left with, okay, advertising is not really much and subscriptions is basically the only thing they had. And you've seen it's taken a while for a lot of those papers to figure out how to pivot into alternative revenue streams. And so the nice thing about building something from the ground up is I can sort of build that in. And now I just have to actually do that and work on it.
That's the hard part, right?
That's the hard part, especially when you're just, I'm not a salesman. So like trying to figure out how to sell ads has been a really tough challenge, but it's it's a learning experience. And that's the other part about like local news that's really fun is you're constantly learning. And so now I'm just learning different things that I never would have learned working purely in a newsroom.
Yeah, that's one thing I've seen on this podcast is I come from more of a business side, and I talk to a lot of journalists, like mission-driven folks, and a lot of them are like, I don't want to sell. I don't want to do like sale. It feels like icky or something like that. But it's like, yeah, you got to do it too.
You got to
Traditionally, there was a journalism side and or editorial side, and business side. But it's like you just have to wear more hats lately. Or obviously, especially definitely. As a one person thing.
Yeah, but I mean that's been true in local news for a while now. Like we've all had to wear more hats because of redundancies and layoffs and downsizing and closures and whatnot. The work doesn't go away. It's just there's fewer people to do it. So you have to do multiple jobs typically.
Yeah. You also talked about, I was curious of the formats. It's primarily a newsletter, right? You talked about TikTok a little. What else? Yeah. Is it just the newsletter, this website, and like social media? Is like what else how else are you're reaching people?
Yeah. So it's primarily a newsletter because newsletters are what I know and love. Also because, the nice thing about a newsletter is it's not controlled by an algorithm. And if I don't like the ESP I'm on because they changed something, I'm free to take my list and go elsewhere.
Yeah.
Can't necessarily do that with social media, as many publishers have found out over the past few decades.
Yes.
But social media is part of it. Part of growing a newsletter in 2026 is you have to be on the platforms that people are on, and obviously ads are one way you can do it, but organic is another way. And it's, again, about diversifying. So I'm on Instagram, I'm on TikTok. Nextdoor has weirdly been pretty good, like pretty decent for growing it. But TikTok is the one that surprised me. I was very resistant to doing it, but I got on it late last year and it's been pretty successful. And it's actually driven a huge amount of my recent audience growth. Not everyone who follows me on TikTok winds up subscribing to the newsletter, but it's, I'd say it's probably like 20 or 30%, which is definitely higher than in my experience, at much bigger newsrooms, the average conversion from social media.
Yeah, no, that's really good. That's awesome. One of the recurring things I always ask people about social, I'm like, well, how are you getting people from social media to your site? And everybody's like,
the challenge.
Everybody's like, if you figure that out, let me know. I was like, okay, so that's the recurring kind of thing.
Yeah, that's always been the challenge, It's hard to move someone. I mean, think about yourself. If you consume something on one platform and they're asking you to move to an entirely different platform. Like that's a big ask. Like you may not like that platform that they're asking you to go to. In certain cases, you may, I mean, with email, we all have email addresses, but if I'm asking you to go from TikTok to Instagram, you may not have an Instagram account, you know? And so like, that's a barrier. And then learning how to use that app because they all have different interfaces and algorithms and all this stuff, like that's a barrier. And so that's always been the challenge. But there are, you know, tons of ways that you can experiment with it. And that's been really fun. And just asking people works, you know, it's not going to get everyone, but it's going to get a decent amount of them if you just consistently ask them to subscribe to the newsletter or, you know, go to your website. Like you'll get some people who will follow through, particularly because those are lower barrier asks than, you know, follow me on a different social media platform where you have to sign up and give over a ton of personal info.
Well, yours is a really great example of this, especially for local media, because you've got a kind of double-edged sword. It's local information and like very specific, like food savings. Yeah. It's all about providing value. Like for me on the social media, you see behind me, you see all my guitar stuff back there. If somebody's good enough at like guitar tutorials or whatever the case may be, like, yeah, maybe I'll give them my email address. You know what I mean? It's just that's a crowded field, so that's a different thing.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I mean, I am in this sweet spot. It's hyper niche, it's hyper local too. You know, like I'm not doing this for Atlantic City, New Jersey. I'm doing this for the Portland, Oregon metro area. So that helps a lot too. It narrows my area of focus and allows me to really hone in on serving that audience and serving their needs and paying attention to what's actually happening locally.
Yeah. From what you've learned, like running this thing, if somebody wanted to do this in, you know, Baltimore, I don't know, wherever, like what would you say to avoid and what to kind of focus on? Like specifically, maybe for a local newsletter, but also specifically like a food one. Like, I'm just curious.
I've had a few outlets reach out and a few like independent journalists reach out and ask. So Outlier Media in Detroit is one who's reached out and they've explored doing like a much, much smaller version of it where maybe they pick a few stores that they pull ads from each week. And that's actually what I would recommend to most people. Like this is very much not sustainable right now. So it's like, I'm confident it can be, but it's not right now. And so for someone else to go all in on this, it would be a big risk. And definitely, I don't think that a newsroom, no offense to newsrooms, but I do not think a newsroom would do this. Part of the reason why I launched this independently is because when I had kind of floated the idea to other people, there was no interest in doing it. They thought it was a waste of time, or they thought it wasn't interesting enough or sexy enough to advertisers. And so, I would say if you want to try it, start smaller. Pick like the biggest stores in town and curate specific deals from there, or something that actually, you know, that thing I mentioned about price tracking. That's not original. Like that's something that a paper in Southern Florida was doing in the 90s. Like they were tracking the prices of a few grocery staples and updating in their print paper. That's something that any newsroom could do tomorrow to help their audience. Is just like, okay, what are 5 products that people are regularly buying? And we're just going to see what the prices are and how they change over time. And yes, there is federal data on this, but the federal data isn't as relevant when you drill down to a hyper local, hyper niche audience. So like for Portland, we actually don't have like Portland data from the Bureau of Labor and Industries. They discontinued that more than a decade ago, I believe. So when I pull, you know, inflation data or whatever, that's regionalized for like the greater Pacific Northwest thing. The cost of living in Seattle is much different than the cost of living in Portland and much different than the cost of living in Eastern Oregon, you know, so it really messes it up. And so when they say that like the average price of apples is 99 cents a pound, that's not what we're seeing on the shelves here. We're seeing like $2 or $3 a pound. So like doing that hyper local data tracking is something that can be really helpful for audiences that really any newsroom could start tomorrow if they wanted.
Yeah, I think I see a world where this could be a super useful thing from a traditional newsroom.
Yeah.
As a separate newsletter or a part of like a newsletter they have or something. Yeah. It's you know, another theme on the show lately has been like, you know, cover the controversies at City Hall and all this stuff, but also show the high school sports because that's how people are going to come in. Or exactly.
You know, like, well, you think about like what was the local paper growing up and specifically the ones, you know, not the local daily, but like the local community papers. That's what they were covering. They were covering, you know, the high school track meets. They were covering who graduated, who made the honor roll, who got engaged, stuff like that. And like, sure, that's not as controversial and exciting, but I think that's one of the challenges that we've run into in local media. Why do I need my local news outlet to cover something that's happening in Washington, D.C.? Like, I need them to cover something that's happening in my neighborhood, in my state, in my city, you know? I mean, I think if more news outlets go back to doing some of that, they'll build better connections with their community and start to see just, you know, better responses from their audience in general. Yeah, totally. Let me pivot that into a promotion for you. Talk about CurioCity Collective. What if somebody wanted to, somebody from a newsroom or wanted to go independent, wanted to talk about some of this stuff with you? What do you do with that project? Yeah, so technically I publish Stumptown Savings under CurioCity Collective. So the idea there is, you know, I have worked for many newsrooms, many organizations, doing everything from like daily production to high level strategy. And so the idea was I wanted to offer my skills as a digital strategist, specifically around newsletters and digital content, to newsrooms and small businesses who can't afford to hire a full-time, you know, director of digital strategy or director of newsletter strategy. You know, that term that gets floated around a lot lately in the business industry is like fractional. And that's basically the idea there is like, you can hire me as like a fractional newsletter strategist or a fractional digital strategist, or you have a project that you need help with. You know, like one outlet that I'm working with up in Calgary, they needed help figuring out how to improve their MailChimp setup. You know, like they've been running it for several years. It's kind of clunky. They wanted some help figuring out like ways to improve the back end, but also the front end and how audiences engage with it. So that's one thing I've done. An independent publication based on the border of New Hampshire and Vermont wanted help building a new website, and Beehive, the platform I'm on, I'm not a developer, but I know how to use Beehive's web designer tool. So I did that for them. There's a bunch of different things that I can do for people, and it's basically everything I've done throughout my career. So I've built dozens of daily newsletters. I've built digital editorial products, like, you know, like the things that I'm building at Stumptown Savings. And so that's sort of the idea too, is like, I'm not just preaching to people to do certain things. I'm actively trying it with my own local publication. And so I can speak firsthand, like not just from past experience, but from current experience about what's working and what's not working. And with CurioCity, the idea is to then spread some of that knowledge around and help organizations and help small businesses. The idea is there's actually more in common between a small newsroom and a small business than people realize. Like we all have to communicate on the digital sphere. You know, we're all on social media. We all should have mailing lists. And specifically small businesses don't really get a lot of help and resources with that. So, you know, right now I'm helping she's a poet and an artist and a educator in Las Vegas. I'm helping her build out some stuff around launching a new newsletter and a new website and figuring out her content strategy for that. So the idea is I can help people with a bunch of different things and really just kind of ease that burden from them and be that like external source of experience and knowledge to help them level up their like digital content strategy, specifically around newsletters, because that is my passion project. Perfect, man. That'll be linked also in the show notes. So if anybody's curious, and Stumptown Savings, of course, scroll down, click the link. Talk to Bryan. So flash forward like 5 years. Let's talk about just Stumptown Savings. Where do you, in an ideal world, everything, you do all this stuff, you said, you know, I just got to do it now. What's this look like as like, say like a thriving like small business or something like that? Like what is that? What's your vision for it there? Yeah, I mean, I would love to have expanded beyond just groceries into other areas where I can help people save and shop smarter. You know, like that's my tagline, is shopping smarter, and that doesn't just apply to food. So it could be household goods. It could be like getting home repair, things like that. And I would love to, you know, maybe have a small team of 2 or 3 people working on this, because it's a lot for one person to do, and it limits. There are a lot of stories that I just can't do right now because time. You know, I only have so many hours in a week as one person. Yep. But if I had a team of people, and specifically if some were more focused on certain areas, you know, that expands it a lot. And I would love to move into another market, you know, another market other than Portland, ideally in the Pacific Northwest, because this is the area that I know and love, and it would allow for some synergies because, you know, a producer 2 hours outside of Portland might actually be producing food that's served in 2 different cities in Oregon, for example. And so like we could cover that for both those publications, but that would be the goal. That's sort of what I'm working towards, is to create a sustainable, thriving local resource that just serves more people and helps them save money in more ways in the coming years.
Yeah, I like that, staying in the same. If you get to the point where you're expanding, it makes a lot of sense to be like in a Seattle, Eugene. I'm not super familiar with the area that well, I guess. Just even from a business standpoint too, you can go to the larger ad buyers and stuff like that too. So good stuff. Cool. Where can people find you? I'll link to your LinkedIn, Stumptown Savings, CurioCity Collective. Anything else you want to promote or want me to link to?
Yeah, I mean, the website, stumptownsavings.com, that's where you'll be able to see a lot of the different things I'm doing, the coverage I'm doing. So not just the weekly deals roundup, but I have this feature. It's on hiatus right now, but it's basically like a grocery diaries feature. It's called Rose City Receipts, where different Portlanders, walk us through how they manage their grocery budget and meal plan for a week. You'll be able to see some of the weirder things I've done, like the Costco membership calculator or the egg price tracker. And then TikTok. I'm on TikTok. Stumptown Savings is the username. I'm doing some fun, weird things on there. I've done this thing where I'll just randomly pick a product and go around to stores in town and show how much, Whole Foods and Fred Meyer and QFC charge for the exact same product, and help people figure out like where they should actually get it at. And I'm just trying a bunch of different weird things on there. So those are 2 great places. And then LinkedIn, I like to share not just my successes, but also the things I'm struggling with on LinkedIn. I get really annoyed when LinkedIn is just like making it seem like local media is all sunshine and roses, because it's not. It's not all doom and gloom, but it's like there are real challenges, and what works for one publisher doesn't always work for everyone else. And so my goal with LinkedIn is just to be very real. So I will share my successes, but I will also share that, I had a really tough time just getting on Facebook when I launched Stumptown Savings. They would not let me create an account. And I was very clear about what was going on with that and the challenge and how that is impacting other local publishers, because I wasn't the only one dealing with this. So that's another place that you can follow me if you want to kind of see behind the scenes of how it's all going.
Yeah, I can attest to that. Brian's a good follow. Like I said, I've been following you for a while before we actually hopped on a call. So cool. Thanks, Bryan. This is great, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you for listening to Small Threads, Big Ideas. You can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you'd like to help the show, the best thing you can do is to tell a friend or colleague and just take a few minutes to leave a rating and a review on whatever platform you're listening to right now. It only takes a minute out of your day, but it really does help the podcast grow and reach more ears. Check back for new episodes every Monday.